Good morning, everyone. Welcome to The Hash, or good afternoon, wherever you are tuning in from. We bring you the latest and greatest in crypto and culture every single day, and I'm delighted to have Ben Powers, Jen Sanasie, Zack, Seward, and Nate DiCamillo on the show today. Welcome, guys, and let's start off by talking about the big Ethereum news. So, Zack, what have we got there?
Yeah, so it's been very heady times in Ethereum land. Ethereum, which of course is above 4,000 for the first time in its history, is also at something like a $500 billion market cap, which is quite staggering. It's also eating into the Bitcoin dominance, which was once quite large. Now the share of non-Bitcoin assets that make up the total market cap of the crypto universe is growing significantly, encouraging Ethereum fans everywhere to think about the F word, flippening, maybe in the distance, somewhere off in the future. So this is a big milestone for Ether. Second largest crypto asset by market cap, is doing gangbusters growth, both as an asset and its network itself. So I'm going to throw this to Naomi. Big round number, an opportunity for folks to really take a look at Ether. What do you see when you see such a large market cap for the world's second largest crypto asset?
I just can't believe you used the F word on the show, Zack. That's some strong language there. You mentioned the flippening. I mean, it's such a touchy point for a lot of people, right? But it is worthwhile considering. You're just having so much money pouring into DeFi, which is really held up by the Ethereum chain. Obviously, you have other walled gardens. You have Solana, and you have your Binance chain. You have all of these different ones, but Ethereum still is king when it comes to DeFi. And as long as it's king, you're going to keep seeing money pour into it. So it is very interesting to see that market predominance of Bitcoin go down. Obviously, Bitcoin is still king, but Ethereum is getting up there. So it's exciting, I think. I love seeing competition across currencies. That includes competition across cryptocurrencies. And I love seeing this decentralized world evolve and seeing people interested in it. And to me, it's kind of surprising, actually, because it's complicated. It's not an easy world to understand. And if you try and figure out these platforms and compound and synthetics and all these yields and yield farming and using these complex algorithms to figure out, yield from all these different things and re-put it back in, it gets complicated quickly. So it was surprising to me to see so many people fly into it. But I guess it shouldn't be surprising because as soon as people realize they can make money in something, they tend to go at it. But exciting stuff. Nate, what are your thoughts on all of this?
I think it's interesting to see the number of, especially recently with the NFT craze, and you think about dApps being able to be built on Ethereum, just the amount of kind of investment theses that can surround ETH. There's a lot of investment theses that surround Bitcoin, but there's not as much innovation and stuff that could be built on top of Bitcoin as can build on top of Ethereum. So I think in terms of trajectory, a flippening is, possibly, not unreasonable, in terms of market cap. But I was curious, Zack, when we hit market cap, highs like this, all-time highs, what does it tell you? Why is 500 billion interesting for the ETH community?
Well, I think it's an opportunity to do some comparative analysis, right? So in the CoinDesk headline, so we're comparing the market caps of, say, JP Morgan and Visa with the market cap of a widely distributed crypto asset. So it does give, the opportunity for comparative analysis. Some people see flaws in that comparative analysis. It's not necessarily apples to apples, but it is quite interesting to think about that this distributed network is, not even the network itself, really, because if you think about all the assets that are committed to that network, it's far greater than that $500 billion number. But if you think about the value of all the Ether in the world, surpassing that of the market value of something like a Visa network was pretty staggering to think about. So, yeah, I mean, it's a round number, right? It's an opportunity to reflect. It's an opportunity to think about the trajectory of an asset that's really been growing in value a lot lately, and seemingly is that first point of entry for more and more people who are discovering the space in this frothy bull market. So interesting to watch Ether. I'm gonna throw this to you, Jen.
This reminded me of a story we covered last week when Bill Maher was saying that he didn't understand crypto. He didn't understand the value of crypto, and he compared it to Apple. He said, he could see the value of Apple because they make $1,000 phones. And this really tells me that people are really understanding the value of Ethereum as a foundation to this decentralized future that we always talk about and that we've been talking about so far on the show today. So this was very exciting for me.
I wouldn't go that far, Jen. I mean, that's very generous. That's very generous of you.
People are understanding.
I tend to have a darker view of the people, so I'm sorry, but I don't. I think people are seeing this number. It's smaller relative to the king, the Bitcoin king. It's a smaller number. It might be a little bit more easy to sort of like enter into because you can buy a relatively larger slice of that crypto coin.
Well, here's what they are saying, Zach.
I don't know. Mm-hmm.
They may not be understanding the decentralization of the future, but they're seeing the opportunity to make money, and that is blocked off to most people in the traditional financial system. So just seeing that opportunity is leading people to go into there, whether they understand the regulations that are precluding their access in traditional finance or not. They are recognizing the benefits, at least, of decentralization, if not recognizing the cause that it is because of decentralization.
Plus, Ethereum has games, they have NFTs, they have DeFi. There's all these different dApps and use cases and stuff like that go way beyond just sort of an investment vehicle or kind of a monetary system like Bitcoin, So I think that could be what's driving a lot of different entry points for people and pumping the price as well, just because you can kind of look at Ethereum and maybe see whatever you want in some ways.
Yeah, it really goes to what Nate was saying about the various sort of investment theses that, follow this network, right? Whether it's, settling a wide swath of transactions or being able to provide all sorts of other applications. It's something that I think people really are able to dig into however they see fit. So we're going to change gears, but we're going to stick with Nate. So Nate, take it away.
All right, folks. So the CPI numbers are in. And they're pretty high. So it's a consumer price index, which is a measure that examines the weighted average of prices of a basket of consumer goods and services, such as transportation, food, medical care, often seen as a indicator for inflation, or it's one of the main indicators for inflation. So the stat you'll see this time around for this month is that CPI rose 4.2% from a year earlier. So what does that mean? That's the comparison between prices in April 2020, when the US was still in lockdown, people were sanitizing their groceries and whatnot, and the comparison to now, April 2021, when about half of the U.S. population is vaccinated. So it's a little bit of a ridiculous way to plot data. One of the better points or data points in this report, in the CPI report, is the gain from month to month. So the gain from last month was 0.8%, which was still much higher, 4 times higher than the Dow Jones survey estimate of 0.2%. Excluding volatile food and energy prices, the core CPI increased 3% year over year and 0.9% on a month-to-month basis. It is led by energy prices that jumped 25% year over year, and especially used car and truck prices, which surged 21% year over year and 10% month over month. But these are higher numbers, guys, than what we thought, than what surveys had kind of estimated. It's curious I want to throw it to the group to see, is this inflation, is this transitory? Is this signs of persistently high inflation? What are your thoughts?
I just want to do an alley-oop to Naomi, and I want to zoom it out a little bit real quick before we get into the minutia. Why do crypto people care so much about inflation? Why is this a big deal? Naomi, slam it home.
Because this is why Bitcoin was created. This is entirely the reason why Bitcoin was created, to have an alternative money system outside of the traditional monetary system. So in 2008, you had Satoshi Nakamoto put together this white paper in the wake of the 2008 crisis, where you had all of these bailouts. Everyone was predicting doomsday inflation in 2008 because you're having all these corporate bailouts as well. And we just realized how unfair this monetary system was. Now, obviously, the doomsday reports didn't come true in 2008. And a lot of people say that's largely because the US still controlled the world's economy. They're still, the primary reserve currency of the world. And when you have that, people are still going to want it, even if you are inflating it away. So they had unprecedented money printing in 08. And now it's like whatever we thought was going on in 08, this is orders of magnitude larger. This is so much worse, the amount of money printing that we're doing at the moment. And the predominance of the US dollar is going down. So crypto people are very interested in inflation because at the time we didn't want to be part of this unfair monetary system. We wanted one where, inflation wasn't set by a group of 12 people in a closed boardroom that weren't even elected, where there's no audits of this, organization, where there's no transparency at all. We wanted something that gave power back to the people, and we wanted money that we can trust. Perhaps trust it due to the laws of mathematics, not due to it being controlled by people who can be co-opted or who make mistakes or who do bad things. So it was really a tool for freedom away from this controlled monetary system. And so what we're seeing now is I hope it's a lot of appreciation for what Satoshi Nakamoto gave us, because we knew that this stuff was going to happen over and over again. Once the governments get a taste of all this money printing, they realize, it didn't really affect the economy. Then they're going to keep doing it. But as Nate pointed out, it is affecting the economy. And you've got to see all of the price rises in the last year. And at what point do we start using the I word? At what point do we start saying, well, prices are rising everywhere and rents are going up? And even though people are leaving cities, the housing prices are still going up and lumber's going up and all of these things are going up. At what point do you say, yes, it's inflation? We are in the middle of a lot of inflation because the government has been printing unprecedented amounts of money. So yeah, it's super important for the crypto world. But I'll throw this back to Ben.
I mean, yeah, this is something obviously we watch closely in crypto just because, all these other assets that we look at when we report on and everything else are meant in some ways as hedges against this sort of thing. They're in some ways more predictable because there's kind of set parameters and rules around them rather than the ones that can be sort of, maybe arbitrarily manipulated. That being said, this makes a lot of sense. I think we've gone through a pretty unprecedented year in a lot of ways for most of us that are alive. And people have been saving money. There's been a lot of money being printed. There's not been a whole lot of spending. And I mean, I live in New York and you saw rent prices decreasing over the course of the pandemic. Now they're actually going back up and more people are starting to move back to the city, I've noticed. So there's just a lot of kind of appetite for spending. And I think that could be driving this. I think, Nate, as you referenced, as we approach larger proportions of vaccinations here in the US, at least, we're starting to see, whole economies reopen, whole states kind of declare we are fully open again. And I think, we are all kind of joking about on Twitter and everything, hot girl summer, man, but everybody's kind of prepping just go crazy over the next few months. And I think that will drive prices up in this way. So, that's kind of the immediate proximity that I see. And so that makes sense. But Naomi, I agree that this is something, you want to be watching closely because it does feed into this larger narrative that, you talk about quite often. And Zach, I'll toss it down to you.
Yeah, Nate, I want to kick it to you. I mean, you do a lot of this economy reporting for CoinDesk, and I just want to know, what's the one data point that really stands out for you? I know there's a lot going on in this report, but what's the one thing that you lock in on as indicative of something happening in the greater market?
The fact that the amount of the used car stat actually, along with some other spending on technology and furniture, whatnot, really shows, I think, people spending their stimulus on a lot of those items that those purchases that they wanted to make or whatnot. One stat that does that in the broader economy that I'm interested in is how bond yields rose in response to the news. I think the 10-year Treasury notes were at 1.64%, but Bitcoin is down on the day right now. So I'm curious to see that this narrative around, yes, Naomi, I'm curious to know this narrative around Bitcoin as an inflation hedge. When does that come through? Is that later or is that more long term? Why did Bitcoin not respond to this news?
Absolutely. So we've seen this since the inception of Bitcoin. It's been heavily correlated with markets. Whenever you have, suspicion that perhaps markets are going to tighten and interest rates are going to go up, people start to tighten their belts and they pull their money out of the most liquid assets. So obviously Bitcoin is going to continue to be affected by things like this. Long term, I think people are just going to get out of the traditional financial system altogether. I think that cryptocurrency is going to be our future. It's going to be the, global reserve currency rather than the US dollar. more. So it is interesting. I think a lot of people do get confused when they see Bitcoin go, counterintuitively in the other direction. But definitely, I think people are worried that either the economy is going to overheat and is just going to have runaway inflation, or the Fed's going to try to rail it in and they're going to tighten, which means interest rates go up, which means like recession, which means that you need to be, making sure that your assets are on hand, and you're, safeguarding your assets. You're propping up, funds that areas of your investment that need propping up, etc. But let's change track. Let's take a little bit of a break so everyone can digest this information. Zack, what have we got next?
After the break, we're going to talk about a new company bringing crypto economies to some of the biggest titles in video gaming. Stick with us, take a break, digest. We'll be back to talk more crypto stuff. Thanks.
We are witnessing the greatest paradigm shift in finance in modern history. Join thousands of newsmakers and influencers talking the future of money at Consensus by CoinDesk. A live virtual experience of leaders, changemakers, virtual reality meetups, keynotes from Ray Dalio, Gary Vaynerchuk, and much more. Get an up-close look at the boom in crypto, the surge of institutional investment in Bitcoin, NFT mania, the breakneck innovation in decentralized finance, and the coming disruption from central bank digital currencies. Join us May 24th to May 27th for Consensus by CoinDesk.
Hello and welcome back to The Hash, where we bring you the latest and greatest in crypto and culture. So Big Time Studios' mission is to bring blockchain-based games to the mainstream. So today the company came out of stealth mode and announced that they're raising $21 million in funding. CEO Ari Milik, I'm not sure if it's Milik or Melich, someone on the panel, feel free to correct me if I've butchered that name, who's also the co-founder of Decentraland, said he plans to bring the first highly rated action title to the market that allows players to acquire, hold, and trade NFT-based items very easily. So he has said this is for a non-crypto native audience. He just wants to make the process very seamless and easy. I know we've spoken about this on the panel before, so I'm going to kick this right down to you, Zack. What do you make of this news?
I dig the mugshot vibe we got going on there. That was fun. Yeah, I know. I think this is a nice little story about the potential evolution of the NFT market, right? In-game economies in video games have existed forever, but they're extremely siloed, right? They're walled gardens. You can command a bajillion points in one game, and those points aren't going to get you much in any other game or even outside of that game itself, right? So the vision here, and we've seen it in the crypto space a couple of times before, but the vision here is to sort of break down those silos and make those assets really work for some of these players of, mainstream gaming titles. So going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. Obviously, Decentraland is one of the sort of primary sort of metaverse platforms out there. So the fact that Ari is going from that space into the more traditional gaming space, it could be really interesting. Interesting investors here. The interesting promise of potentially making in-game economies more fair and remunerative for hardcore gamers. So that to me is a takeaway. But yeah, time will tell if they're able to make this click in a way that works for your average gamer. We'll see.
The investors are interesting, and the executive team is also interesting. It's made up of people who've worked on. Wow, what was that?
The city.
That is the city speaking directly to us. Yep, all day, every freaking day.
Okay, I missed you.
The executive team is made up of people who've worked on World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, and League of Legends. I am not a gamer myself, but I immediately thought, the people who play those games, what does the process look like to get them playing blockchain-based games and to introduce them to these decentralized games where they can then kind of buy and trade these digital items? Ben?
I mean, I think you make blockchain games look more like those games, right? Like what they really talked about here is sort of making AAA titles. So like the really big, like blockbuster ones that get released every few years that have like really intense followings that you can play online and all these other sorts of things. And we've seen a variety of different blockchain based games, right? We've seen some like turn-based games. We've seen kind of card games, but we've not seen sort of like something like Cyberpunk 2020, RIP that whole release. But, that level of excitement, that level of popular attention. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they're able to do that, how they're able to do like an action adventure game that you could play on, PS5 or something like that. Because I do think, like, again, we talked about yesterday kind of the use cases for NFTs and how this market is developing further. I think this makes all the sense in the world, right? If you're looking about this as collectibles, like if you're looking about this particularly within video games that have their own sort of like status structures and language and like communications and vernacular, like these things could be really important. Like people grind for hours on hours on hours to acquire like rare materials and like tech and stuff like this. And so we reference like Fortnite, for example, but like NFT Fortnite skin or something akin to that, I think is just kind of the exemplary like way for NFTs to go if we're talking about digital collectibles more available to a mass audience.
Naomi, are you a gamer?
I'll jump in. I'm not a gamer at all. I'm terrible at games. I get way too stressed. Like I tried for a long time and we even have an Oculus and there are these zombie games and I get so terrified because I'll see people coming at me that I just kind of throw the headset off and just like, oh my God, I can't do this. But I will say like it makes so much sense for like NFTs to be in the gamer world, right? Because in games, you're buying all these custom designed skins and accessories for your character and cool objects, but they're walled gardens and you have them in game and you might spend all of your time invested in, getting these treasures. And a lot of people do, they really value it, but it's only valuable in the game. And it would be really cool to see an economy where these things can be traded outside of games. And rather than maybe like blockchain games coming to a fore and getting more popular, just seeing integration in existing games with assets that have cross compatibility. Maybe all games start to, become compatible with the ERC 721 standard or something like that, or a new standard that people create so that different games you could perhaps like swap tokens over, swap accessories over, like that sort of stuff could get really cool. And I'm definitely excited to see that world evolve.
Well, $21 million, a lot of big names behind the Series A investment. Do we think, any one of you guys can answer this, is this where all the money is going to go next? Right now, we're seeing a lot of money pile into NFTs. Do you think we're going to see it kind of go into this gaming world next?
Well, there's a lot of money. So. There's just a lot of money right now. You have these crypto native investors who are just sitting on gains, and they have the ability to place a number of bets in a number of different things that may or may not be next. And this, I think, could be one of them, this gaming space trying to connect with a mainstream audience who all of a sudden is aware of what an NFT is for the first time and maybe more amenable to finding ways to monetize those experiences. Naomi, I think you are next. So if you're next, so I'm going to put my money in you and I'm going to invest in this next segment. Take it away.
Next segment. I don't know if you want to do that because this next segment is kind of a blow to the head on ETFs. So SEC has put out a statement and they're talking about Bitcoin in general. So they're saying Bitcoin is highly speculative and it sort of suggests that they're still ETF skeptics. We've been hoping that with Gensler in, maybe they will finally approve the first Bitcoin ETF. I believe that there are 10 on their table at the moment to consider. But now they put out this report saying the staff strongly encourages any investor with exposure to the Bitcoin futures market to carefully consider the risk disclosure of the fund, the investor's own risk tolerance, the possibility, as with all investing, of investor loss. These are all things investors should understand with Bitcoin, and that it's highly speculative. So I'll throw this to the group, but I have some thoughts about the role of, guys, about the role of the SEC and them moving from just an institution that makes sure people have the right information to make their own choices to an institution that's precluding certain products because they don't like them, regardless of what information people have. So there's a big difference there. One of them is within the purview of the SEC, the other is not. So I'll throw to the group just to get your thoughts on all of this and whether you agree that they're throwing shade on ETFs and perhaps making that less likely. Zack, what are your thoughts here?
I think the momentum around a potential Bitcoin ETF approval has been growing pretty mightily, along with, I guess, interest in the greater Bitcoin market. So the fact that there's a dash of cold water on this, I think, is an interesting signaling move by this agency. But beyond that, I don't know. I mean, I think this has always been sort of like a knock on the Bitcoin market, right? That it's speculative, that it's subject to manipulation. This is something that SEC has been saying for years. So bit of more of the same, but I think the timing is potentially interesting. Like if you sort of like, consulting the tea leaves and sort of like, you're seeing that there's a number of Bitcoin ETFs under active review at the SEC right now. So for them to come out with this statement, I think is interesting timing wise, but I don't know what to make of it beyond that. Nate, I saw you may have had your hand up, and I'd be curious for your thoughts for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. On the other hand of this, we have several what are called Form 19B4s that have been filed that are under review. So those are like the final step when the exchange is working with the ETF issuer to try to get the application across the finish line. And the SEC has extended the review period on those, so they haven't declined one yet. So that's at least one positive note for that. Where I think the SEC is probably trying to think about this is they're seeing a lot of companies that are putting Bitcoin in treasury, and they see a lot of people with assets pouring into other parts of the crypto market, and they know that as soon as they create an ETF around this, that a lot of other companies that are not as crypto native are going to feel comfortable investing in. So they're probably thinking about whether or not crypto is a systemic risk. But at least they're still thinking about it. There hasn't been any rejections as of yet.
For sure. And I do want to draw attention to another thing that they said in this report. They said, consider whether, in light of the experience of mutual funds investing in the Bitcoin futures market, that the Bitcoin futures could accommodate ETFs, which, unlike mutual funds, cannot prevent additional investor assets from coming into the ETF if the ETF becomes too large or dominant in the market, or if liquidity in the market starts to wane. I mean, it's just such an interesting way of thinking about it. It's all about control. It's about, mutual funds can stop people investing in their products. There is no control over ETFs. Therefore, we're hesitant to let anyone release one. It's just, I mean, if I were the SEC, I probably wouldn't approve ETFs because, a lot of people are going to want it. It's very popular. It's going to give people exposure to this new asset class that, the government doesn't have control over. So yeah, it may provide a systemic risk. I don't know. But it is interesting that they're explicitly stating that control is a factor in their thinking in all of this.
Yeah, I think like the interesting note about it is kind of in the context of the ETF conversation. Like Zach, like you referenced, is kind of the first dash of cold water we've seen, and they did delay a decision on kind of some pending ETFs for a few months. And I guess to me, that's, if you're again like looking at all these tiny data points, trying to like tell where the future is going, this is an interesting one. That being said, outside of that, it feels a little bit sort of like the SEC parroting what they've been saying for a long time. I don't think that anybody that's from an institutional perspective, right? Like we're seeing banks get involved with Bitcoin, and we're seeing a lot more traction than we have previously. And I don't think there are people that are unaware that there are like risks involved in this. A whole lot of value add in that aspect. It just seemed like a repetition of a previous statement that we've seen before, just in another bullish market. But I want to take us in a slightly different direction and talk about some very, very lovable losers. So Loser Coin is a new coin that has been spun up on Binance Smart Chain based out of China. Now, I just thought this was so interesting because we've been talking about Doge, we've been talking about all these other things, and Loser Coin was essentially, it was come up with as an idea of like, oh, these two devs were like, we're losers. Like, we missed out on the bull market. We're like too scared to get in now. And so we're just going to spin up this token and have some fun with it. And it's sort of been adopted as like a lovable loser idea for a lot of people who see themselves as losers. And it's kind of fits. I was talking to our colleague Moyao Shen, who wrote about this, and it fits with a sort of self-deprecation culture in China, and also sort of this idea of mom and pop investors who play the stock market, kind of calling themselves chives jokingly as they're getting like devoured by sort of large institutional players that they see as never really having a way to win over. So Loser Coin is factoring into all of that. It's now trading on exchanges and actually has quite a a sizable market cap in some ways. So this is kind of the latest like joke coin that's out there. We're seeing more and more of these come up, but this is one I have an affection for because of the name and the mindset that seemingly goes with it. But group, what you got? I just thought this one was a lot of fun.
I never thought I would hear you say that you have an affection for a joke coin, Ben.
I do today.
Yeah,
I want to hear Naomi's thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, let me just shout out Mu Yao Shen because she's doing really great work sort of uncovering like these cool communities, especially in Asian markets. She was looking at Shiba Inu coin, loser coin. Each of these kind of coins, like they do have this kind of interesting sort of cultural phenomena that emerge around them. So she's doing a really good job of unpacking some of those interesting sort of communities. So just a shout out to Mu Yao's work, which has been pretty stellar on the market scene of late. But yeah, I mean, BSC, man, Binance Smart Chain is just a hotbed of like funny, weird, strange, off color, like token name coin projects that I won't mention here on TV because it's not super classy. But this is sort of an example of that, where this is a hotbed of innovation where all these projects are flocking to. So to see this one kind of take off the way that it has is interesting for sure. Naomi, what do you got?
Yeah. Well, I want to dive into what you were saying about this cultural phenomenon around it. So the idea is, I mean, coming from this self-deprecation that Ben was talking about, I mean, you have small players in China who are really feeling like they're being eaten up by the larger players. They're feeling like they're being exploited by big institutions, that there's no ability for them to make money because at the end of the day, it's all going to be ripped out from underneath them. And this idea of chives, like you said, Ben, it's, common vegetable in Chinese diets, and the idea is that they're ripe for harvesting and ingesting by big players and resigned to major losses. So, I mean, it's not unlike the culture of crypto in general. So it's interesting to see this other layer underneath Bitcoin, right? Because crypto really was about democratization of money. It's about, say, we're taking power back from institutional players. We're not going to be ingested by you anymore. We're not going to have our savings inflated away because, you want to favor the incumbents. You want to favor the pockets of big financial institutions by, taxing away our dollars through this hidden tax of inflation. So, it is very interesting to see this one layer deeper and for them to be recognizing that Bitcoin is kind of this institutional thing now, and they can't make any money on it. They missed out on it, and so they're trying this other thing. Like, I mean, it's kind of this interesting idea. I very much disagree with the Bitcoin being seen as like an establishment and institutional play, because they basically said people are turning to tokens that are more grassroots. Like, there's nothing more grassroots than Bitcoin. It's an entirely grassroots phenomenon that now institutional players are getting involved with. But I do think it's kind of interesting that this, give power back to the people ethos is so prominent in this culture.
Yeah, and I think...
Did Ben freeze? He froze. I was really excited to see his thoughts.
Oh, yeah. This is great.
Sorry, Ben.
Absolutely. I mean, just to say, like, some trends that we've seen. So we've seen, like, GameStop has been another trend of people saying, let's take the power back. You've got the Shiba Inu token, which is like the Dogecoin killer. People like taking power back from Dogecoin, which was even it's so funny. It's getting very meta that there are all these layers of decentralization on top of the decentralization we're already seeing in the space. And there's a lot of fun in it. Like, it's a very joking currency. Ben is back. Ben's back. He's not. There he is.
Wow.
Back.
He's still frozen.
Oh, he's still frozen.
Oh,
yeah, he's frozen.
He's gone.
I just want to add on that point that no, I've completely forgotten my point. I'm going to hand it over to you, Jen.
Okay, cool. So I was actually frozen for a little bit there too, but I have a question for the panel. We're saying that it's kind of fun to talk about this coin, and I just need to ask this question. Why don't we speak about Doge like this?
No. You lost me, but I am back. We are not talking about Doge.
Okay. Wow, Ben came into the last word perfectly.
Exactly. I refreshed my feed so many times, but no, this is more fun. And that is our end note for today.
That was immaculately executed.
There it is.
That was amazing. All right, that's the show. We got a wrap, but it was good times. Sorry for seeing you frozen a couple times, Ben, but thank you for coming back with a vengeance. That was awesome. This was The Hash. We'll be here again tomorrow. If you want to watch some more CoinDesk TV, 3 p.m. Eastern Time is your next opportunity to do so. Until then, just read CoinDesk.com and all the great articles on there. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow on The Hash. Cool. See ya.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.